Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to discuss how the Clearinghouse secures your data. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to John Ramsey, who is the CISO of the National Student Clearinghouse. Hi, John.
Hello, Rita. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Ramsey, the Chief Information Security Officer here at the Clearinghouse. We get asked often throughout the year, how do we secure all the data that we're receiving from all the schools and all of the customers? And what we like to do is really take this moment and for about the next 15, 20 minutes, kind of highlight the stuff that we do, how we secure the data, how security is second nature to us at the Clearinghouse, and then definitely leave about the last 10 minutes for an opportunity for any questions that you might have. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Clearinghouse, we were founded as a nonprofit back in '93. We service more than 3,600 colleges and universities, 99% of the post-secondary students, 13,000 high schools, which is 70% of the secondary students. We save the education community over $750 million annually. And how does that impact me as a CISO at the Clearinghouse? We probably have the world's largest database on student PII at over 150 million plus records. So we take security serious because we have a whole lot of data that can impact a lot of people's lives. A little bit about me. I've been the CISO at the Clearinghouse for the last 4 years. Prior to this, I was the Chief Information Security Officer for the U.S. House of Representatives. And prior to that, I was the first CISO at the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board that oversees the government's retirement system, valued at about $480 billion. So I've been in direct CISO roles for about nine years now, in the IT security community for an easy 25 years. At the Clearinghouse, I'm not going to go over this whole slide, but just for your reference, we provide a bunch of different services to all of the institutions as well as commercial customers that are out there. So we have a lot of impact. And what I'll do now, I'll cover on some of the highlights, and then I'll dig a little bit deeper into how we secure your data. The highlights, though, the Clearinghouse is committed to cybersecurity. I couldn't work for a better company that lives and breathes this. We have changed our culture. I don't want to say change our culture. Our culture has evolved to think of this as second nature with everything we do, whether it's an IT change, business change. We know the security of the student data is paramount. With that said, we use a lot of different standards. So not only do we support the institutions, and we use HECFACTS, the Higher Education Cloud Vendor Assessment Tool, to show our security effectiveness. We have commercial customers, as well as we have some areas where we use PCI. But what all this means is we get assessed, independently assessed from every angle to ensure that we have an adequate and sufficient program in place. The last 2 years, we've done SOC 2 Type 2s. We've had clean audits on those each year. So we do PCIs every year. We have clean audits. We go through financial audits, so we have clean audits. But then really diving deeper into this, we do multiple security assessments throughout the entire year. In the last 12 months, we've had independent assessments coming from Mandiant, which is a major tier 1 forensics investigation company. If you've heard any of these major breaches you've heard out there, Mandiant is a company they call in to come out and resolve the issues. We've had independent security assessments with Microsoft, AWS. Our last one with Microsoft, they gave us some nice kudos that we had some of the highest scores that they've ever seen. But this is really important for you as our customers. You know, you shouldn't take our word that our security is top notch. You really should demand that proof that we're walking the walk. Additionally, some other highlights. We do report our security status. Every month I provide it to the CEO and executive leadership team. Every quarter we brief our CEO at our business reviews on what our security posture is, as well as our forward thinking of where security is going to go. And then every quarter we also brief our board of directors. We do have defined and exercised incident response processes. Every year the executive leadership team goes through a drill on how we respond to a major incident. A couple of years ago, we did full simulations at a cyber range. The last 12 months, the actual cybersecurity team, we go through ransomware exercises about every 4 to 6 weeks, constantly preparing training as you fight. For when that day happens, we're going to make sure that we have everything in the utmost paramount for the security of the student data in place. Then going to the last bullet there, security and privacy is hand in hand. So we have the student privacy pledge, I keep safe FERPA badges. Our chief privacy officer, as well as myself and my team, we work hand in hand to make sure that we're doing privacy and security in parallel. A few more highlights. So our overall focus and strategy for the security at the Clearinghouse, the first one is we build alliances to deter shared risk. What does that mean? We have forensics retainers in place to ensure that we have a 4-hour response time. We have partnerships with Microsoft, partnerships with IBM. We have partnerships with the Department of Homeland Security. The important thing is the Clearinghouse or no organization could actually fight the fight by themselves. We use that alliance of power and knowledge to actually help deter and minimize any risks that come towards us, especially from outside the Clearinghouse. Secondly, we have extensive cybersecurity detection techniques in place. I've got a couple of slides on specifically how we're preventing and protecting ourselves from ransomware. And then the last one there, there's a framework called the ATT&CK framework, Adversarial Tactics and Techniques and Common Knowledge. And what this means, every January, we look at the about 200 plus nation state tactics on how they would actually try to breach an organization. We cross-reference that against what they call the Lockheed Martin's kill chain to really assess in depth, can we stop a nation state level of attack from getting into the Clearinghouse or exfiltrating data? We're looking at all the major attack vectors, email, web, user endpoints. On the ransomware prevention slides coming up, I'll actually talk how we don't rely on just one tool. We have several tools for each of these vectors to minimize that risk. We encrypt everything, anywhere and everywhere possible. At rest and in transit is at an absolute minimum. Multi-factor. Passwords and credentials are required. Multi-factor has a success rate of about 98 to 99% stopping malicious activity from compromising credentials. Not only do all of our users use MFA coming into any of the organizations, our VPN accesses MFA every single time. Our administrators are MFA'd every single time. If you're outside of 5 different geographic locations, your access into the Clearinghouse is automatically blocked. If you're not trying to access from an NSE issued and managed device, your access is automatically blocked. And again, this is really to minimize that risk of any outside actors trying to get in and touching your data. And then every year we have penetration tests. Mandate comes in December. And the penetration tests that we have really focus on nation state tactics, techniques, procedures. Last year, they did what they call a purple team pen test. They conducted over 300 automated attacks, and our full security suite stopped and automatically blocked or detected over 92%, which is just a phenomenal score. There is no such thing as perfect protection. I mean, we do have areas that we continuously improve upon, and that becomes our next year's cybersecurity roadmap. Now, how do we do this? As far as a resource perspective, we actually have right about seven staff, including myself, in the Office of Cybersecurity at the Clearinghouse. So we are the core team. That includes myself, a cybersecurity architect, a senior security engineer. We have a dedicated cloud security engineer that just lives and breathes with everything for AWS security and any other cloud services that we use. We have a threat analyst that facilitates some of our relationships with IBM. That's our managed security service provider that's 24/7/365 coverage. We also have a senior security engineer and a manager of information assurance that handles and facilitates any of your questions as customers on our actual audit practices and our security controls and how we've implemented that. But what's really important here is the 4 items in brown. Those are our relationships. That managed security service provider, again, within 30 minutes, if they have an alert, they have to notify us. We have a managed detection and response service. So if something is identified within 30 minutes as critical, they're actually taking action on it. They're just not notifying and alerting us. They'll isolate the box and make sure that something is minimized and that compromise isn't spreading throughout the organization. That tier 1 forensics retainer, that's with Mandiant. That's a global leader on incident response. And then we have those strategic security partnerships with Department of Homeland Security and a couple others. And then we also hired an Active Directory security engineer that works in our infrastructure team. Works directly for them, but focused on security 24/7 to make sure that team has what they need. And what I'm showing here, and I'm not going to go over this whole slide, but I'm going to give you some highlights. Any mature security program is really going to cover at a minimum these 4 areas. Management controls, that's really the CISO running the cybersecurity program as a program. We're developing policies, and when I say policies, not the hard copy policies, but security requirements throughout everything. That we're actually assessing metrics and performance measures. I've got about 6 dashboards. The moment one of our dashboards dips a little, we know there's an action that we need to take. We don't have to analyze 1,000 devices to figure out what the next steps are. That helps facilitate our response times. We have operational controls. That's really our security stack. How we're continuously monitoring and continuously scanning all of our devices. We have an architect that does nothing but policy design. We have security built in within all of our within all of our applications. We're not bolting this on after the fact. And then audit and compliance, we're proving that we've got in place what we say we have in place. Now, if I were to give you a graphic on how we actually do security at the Clearinghouse, I think the best analogy is a castle. The castle, you got the keys to the kingdom right in the middle. All of your student data is right in the middle. How do we protect that? And it's not just one tool. It's a series of tools, but it's a series of the right tools. I'm going to start at the bottom left corner, and I'm just going to work around counterclockwise and describe what we have in place. So we have threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is really, for lack of better words, kind of like a spy. It gives us some inside knowledge that something is happening and that we can try to respond to it at machine speed versus manually doing any type of investigations. And this threat intelligence feeds all of these tools that I'm about to describe. On the outermost part of our perimeter, we have intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems. We stop hundreds of thousands of penetration attempts a month, and that's normal for an organization. We have network access control. If you're not an NSC device, you automatically get blocked from accessing our network. We have what they call next generation firewalls. So these firewalls are also scanning for malicious activity before anything can come into our enterprise. We have DLP, data loss prevention tools. This minimizes any data exfiltration trying to leave the organization. Right now, if you were to try to upload an SSN to an internet web browser or through an email, that automatically gets blocked at the Clearinghouse. We have endpoint protection antivirus. We really have what they call EDR, endpoint detection and response. That integrates threat intelligence with antivirus to provide an immediate response, and everything is set to automatically block and resolve. And what that means is that we get expedited response times. We have a reliance that the endpoints are doing, or the endpoint detection is doing what they say they're doing, versus providing a 12-hour investigation period before we take action on it. Patching. Patching is really looking at like the holes in your castle. You're going to get them every so often. All of our systems do, our home systems, our work systems. But the way that we resolve patching at the organization, we have patching turned on automatically. So for our user endpoints, having automatic updates enabled, all of our user endpoints are typically fully patched within 96 hours of when a new patch is released. That means we're not having vulnerabilities exploited by the malicious actors. We have additional security layers, vulnerability scanning. We have 4 different tools that do vulnerability scanning. So on a daily basis, all of our user endpoints get scanned for any new vulnerabilities that might come up. Our servers get scanned every 2 to 3 times a week. Our external perimeter gets scanned by Department of Homeland Security on a weekly basis. And if they identify a critical or high finding, it's then rescanned every 12 hours until it's resolved. We also have vulnerability scanning of all of our domains and registrars. And when I say registrars, I'm talking IT registries for a URL and what an organization owns. We have about 200 of those. Those are scanned in real time also. We also scan the deep web and the dark web. Just in case we were to ever have data exfiltration go outside of the organization, we want to be sure that we identify the leak before anybody else does, just so we can respond quicker. That's our proactive way of identifying that. And I want to say the statistic is 20% of all breaches happen without an organization knowing it or somebody's contacting them. We also have web content, what they call DNS sinkholes. If they're malicious DNS entries or URLs, they go out into what they call the netherworld, for lack of better words. It goes nowhere. We're looking at advanced threats on our domain controllers. We have multiple tools that look at that. All of our code is scanned before we go public and publish it for the schools to use, so it's secure code. And then we have cloud factors. We have multiple ways that we look at email security. We have a cloud access security broker that analyzes all of our access into and out of the internet. We have anti-phish policies in place, anti-ransomware as well as advanced ransomware policies in place. And we monitor for data exfiltration on several different factors. So what this slide says, and really in a quick synopsis, we take cyber extremely serious, and we have redundant controls everywhere to make sure your data is protected. And then the natural question is, well, holy crap, John, that's a whole lot of stuff you have in place. How do you really know that everything is configured and operating the way it should be? What we have here is an example of something that we monitor in real time. And I provide this to our CEO and executive leadership team on a monthly basis, as well as our board of directors quarterly. We have what they call a cyber exposure score. That cyber exposure score looks across all of our devices and the risk posture with each one. That includes the lack of patching as well as potential countermeasures that should be in place that aren't. For the last 13 months, we score in what they call a low risk posture. That means we have everything in place pretty well strong. Compared to the banking industry, we score 204. The banking industry scores in the 600s. And the overall population, and we use Tenable for our cyber security score, and their overall population of about 30,000 clients average 600. So we facilitate patching and response times pretty good. We also do phishing exercise campaigns every month. We send out phishing campaigns to all of our users. We're averaging between 2 to 3% of click rate, which is great. We might only have 1 or 2 users that might click on a phishing email that comes in. And granted, the natural question is, well, it only takes one, John. With that said, also on the ransomware prevention slides, we have multiple tools in case that user does click. That's going to help us really minimize the risk and the threat that might happen because of that. And I mentioned earlier, there's no such thing as perfect protection. It's a matter of time when an organization does get breached or they have some sort of security incident. So with that said, we do have a robust incident response plan in place. But more specifically, we have playbooks that facilitate that incident response plan. One of our playbooks, the notification playbook, addresses the first 4 hours of an incident response. Specifically, it's broken out in 30-minute increments. And every 30 minutes, it identifies who's doing what. And when I say who, it's not a matter of the IT team or cyber team, but what is the chief legal officer doing? What is the CIO doing? What is the CEO doing? What is our VPs of our business wings are doing? And it really makes sure that we have the notification to all of our customers in place, as well as our internal staff when an incident happens, while we're minimizing the risk and the technological threats that come along with it. And then we actually practice these in workshops throughout the year. And we're going down to the last 10 minutes here. I've got 2 more slides. I won't read over all of this, but these are some of the areas that we actually do for ransomware prevention. So the major attack vectors for ransomware is patching, the lack of patching, emails, and web filtering. All of our patching is automated on our endpoints, is usually done within 96 hours. Our servers are in a more controlled environment. And then we have weekly patch cycles for them depending on the environment. Emails. We actually have 3 layers of email protection. When I say 3 layers, we have 3 different tools. We are an Office 365 shop. We're E5 licensed. We maximize all of the capabilities that Microsoft provides. We then have a secondary tool that all of our emails get scanned through. And then we have a third tool. And that third tool links back to the federal government. And there's special indicators of compromise, for lack of better words, malicious fingerprints, that it does one last check against just to make sure that none of our stuff is compromised. Web filtering, the internet. We have 4 different layers of web filtering applied, making sure that we're not going to any malicious sites that are out there. So we're not relying on one tool. We actually have 4 tools. And this is how we're really minimizing our risk with ransomware. And then the countermeasures that we have in place. I spoke to it earlier, MFA. There is very little at the Clearinghouse that you can get onto without MFA, and that's important because that's a major prevention technique on allowing ransomware from spreading. We do backups regularly, and they're stored off-site. So if for some reason ransomware were to infect us, we could restore your data just fine. We have data loss prevention implemented, making sure none of the data exfiltration from ransomware actually gets out of the organization. We did a year-long project about 3 years ago on least privilege. We have removed all unnecessary access from all devices. Then the last bullet there, endpoint detection and response. We have everything set to automatically check and block. We're not wasting time analyzing. We're going to rely on the accuracy of the tool to actually prevent something from spreading. And then the last slide, and then we'll open it up to questions. So technology isn't enough. Security is more than just technology. So we do a fairly robust program with our users as well. It's really more about culture than it is just throwing money at technology and hoping it works. We have an extensive security awareness program in place. We have a dedicated security awareness coordinator that focuses on this nonstop. Now, what he has done, we also have what they call a security ambassador program at the Clearinghouse. The security ambassador program involves a group of volunteers to help spread the word from the rank and file systems and up. And that's fairly significant. We had 12 slots and we actually had 17 volunteers. That's how many people at the organization really jumped on to trying to help build a security ambassador program and live this. We do have documented required annual security awareness training. We do phishing exercise campaigns all month throughout the entire year. Annually, all of our users also sign up prescribed rules of behavior so they know what they can and can't do on NSC devices. And the users actually attest and sign to our policy annually as well. So we really make sure that the users understand what they can and can't do. And then the last bullet there is our security monitoring. Our security incident event management system is maintained and triaged by a third-party provider. So we don't have coverage just from 8 to 5. We truly have 24/7/365 coverage. We have service level response times ensuring if something is detected, that it's identified and it's resolved fairly immediately. That was a lot of information, but I am open to any questions in the last 5 minutes to help explain anything that we do at the Clearinghouse.
We do have a few questions. So the first question we have is, how does the Clearinghouse security respect customer privacy?
That's an excellent question. And that really goes back to that least privilege. As far as the customer privacy, you're not allowed access to anybody's data unless there's a business need for that. Now, granted, depending on the customer, there are some business needs where we might audit some reports that come into the organization, or customers have questions that, this student's transcript isn't matching up. So there is a small team that does have access to some of that data as part of their job requirements to help facilitate any of the issues. But to be direct about it, it really goes back into least privilege, and we don't allow access to where there isn't. Now, if that said, earlier this year, from January through about June, we took a 5-month project, my team and I and a few core players, and we audited all of our PII environments and who has access to them, just to make sure that we're walking the walk as we're talking the talk.
Thank you, John. And then the next question we have is, how does the Clearinghouse threat detection technology handle inspecting encrypted data?
That's a really good question as well. So now what we don't do, we don't go through and we don't decrypt everything. We do have decryption for outbound to the internet, and that's that fine line between privacy and security. You don't wish to invade the customer's privacy, but there's a fine line making sure that malicious actors aren't encrypting data and taking it out. So we have web content gateways that have the ability to decrypt at least those items going outside of the organization via the internet. And that is decrypted and inspected. We also have within our Microsoft 365 environment, although it's a cloud environment, we have disabled all external access. So we have stuff encrypted within our Office 365 environment, but is literally prevented from going to the internet outside of Microsoft's tenancy that we have.
Thanks, John. And that's all the questions I see. And as we're almost at time, John, is there any last tip that you would like to offer to our attendees?
Yeah, so my address is here, and by all means, the security of your data is paramount. I can't say that enough. If you ever have any doubts or questions or wish for us to expand on how we secure your data, never hesitate to reach out to me directly. We're an open book. We take it serious. We have the right stuff in place, and I'm happy to share and elaborate and explain until you're comfortable, by all means.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you everyone for attending today.
Thank you.